Hi guys, Craig here and welcome back to the channel. Today on the Renogy series I'm going to be focusing on their 2000 watt inverter. So this is a 12 volt to 230 volt output inverter, pure sine wave. It has two AC outlets here, has a transfer switch here, so it's just a bypass thing, so when you plug in 240 volt, bypasses the inverter and uses the grid. Comes with a couple of battery leads. Now these leads are rated at 100 amp. You can see it, whoop, there. And in my mind, 2000 watts with 100 amp leads is not going to work. You could double those up, which is why I suspect they've given you two, but it's only a very short run. So you may end up having to replace those leads if your battery's going to be a little bit further away from the inverter. I've put 95mm squared cable on, and I'd suggest that on a 2000 watt inverter, 50mm squared minimum, 70mm would be even better. Now, they come with these little covers to go on the positive and the negative terminals to cover up the battery terminals. They don't take 95mm squared cable, so I've had to just leave them off, and I've taped it up. Now, I've run this inverter already over the last couple of videos. You've probably seen that when I was doing discharge tests on the Renogy Pro Lite. But the limitation of the Pro Lite, it's 100 amps 1C, which is at nominal 12.8 volts, is 1280 watts. So to get to 2000 watts out of this inverter, to load it up, I've had to put on a larger battery. This one probably everybody should know and love. It's the 300 amp hour battery, and it's got a 200 amp BMS on it. So that'll be plenty to go to a 2000 watt inverter. So I'll load this up today. I'll probably try and run around 2000 watts for about half an hour. That would be a reasonable length of time for what people are going to be doing. See how much noise comes out of it when the fans kick in after running the load for quite a while. And yeah, we'll just see if this thing works and it's stable at 2000 watt. Oh, I forgot to mention it has a little remote on and off switch. So it comes with a lead, probably a good few meters on that lead, and you basically just plug it in here. So when you select option 2, then it's on the remote. So you could use that and mount that inside your van so you can access it and turn off the inverter when it's not in use, because they do have a standby current. It's not very much, but over time it will deplete your battery. If you're putting the caravan or whatever back into storage for 3 or 4 months and you leave that inverter turned on, you'll come back with a flat battery. So always a good idea to turn your inverter off when not in use. Okay, turn him on now. There we go. That noise you can hear is the fan heater over in the background over there. So that's ramping up now. I'm happy to use this shunt. It's accurate enough for the testing that we're doing. There's no issues there. So it's going to settle in at about that 1 kilowatt load, which is what it's previously did. We'll run that for a little while, and then we'll ramp it up. Okay, so we're at 85 amps discharge. Now what it does, it also has a 4000 watt surge. I'm not going to try and get to the 4000 watt surge at this point in time, because I've actually got this plugged in via genuine 175 amp Anderson plugs. So you can't get to 4000 watt continuous load out of that, but I'll easily get to the 2000 watts. So that's good enough for what I'm doing. Okay, there you go, it's settled in now. Let's call it 81.6 amps continuous load. So if we just turn the fan heater up to the next notch, we're right on that 2 kilowatt, but I think that's going to, yeah, it'll come back down and settle. .6, that's probably about the number on that fan heater from memory, so we're at 130 amps. Okay, so I'll let that run. The fans haven't kicked in yet. No noise coming out of it, so it's not generating any heat at this point in time. So I'm now at 1.8 kilowatt load on the inverter, which is 151 amps. As you can see, it's brought the voltage down a little bit, so voltage under load, it'll always come down. That's perfectly fine. Now to achieve the 1.8, I've actually plugged in 2 fan heaters on their low setting. Fans still haven't kicked in, so we'll let that run. As soon as the fans cut in, I'll come back and we'll see how noisy it is. The fans have now come on, and you can hear the noise coming out of the inverter. It's not as loud as the 2 fan heaters running over there. It's actually quiet on those. Now, just to give you an idea of dimensions of this thing, so if you're going to go past the terminals, which you're going to have to allow a bit of space, and past the AC outlet plugs, you're looking at around 500 mil, or about 20 inches in the old money. And then in terms of width, you're looking at about 230 mil, or about 9 inches. And it's not really that high. So around that 100 mil mark. Now don't forget, you're going to have to leave clearance around this inverter for heat. So you've got to let it dissipate. So it's probably not a great idea to have a solar charge controller sitting hard up against an inverter like that. You know, you should space that out even more than what I've done. But, you know, again, this is just for testing purposes, so I'm happy with that. Now, we've been running a little while, and, you know, as you can see, we're not generating really any heat. 29 degrees on the inverter. No issues with any of that. 29, 30 over here. Again, that's all completely fine. So 1.8 kilowatts. Now we're at 151 amps, and remember my limitation is around that 175 amps. But what I might do, just for a short period of time, is I'm going to turn up the fan heater on one of them and bring the load up. Whoop, and the inverter didn't like that straight away. So, oh no, it's still running. No, it's cutting out. Okay, so there you go, guys. It's trying to run, but it's cutting in and out continuously. So we're not going to run that. And that was about another 600 watts that I put on that to take it up to about that 2.2 kilowatt output. Sorry, 2.4 kilowatt output, and it won't run. So there's your limitation of the inverter straight away. You can see it tries to run it, but it cuts in and out. All right, just to double check that, I'm going to do it one more time. So we'll turn up this load. Okay. And it can't run it. So we're asking too much of that inverter now. We'll turn it back down. And it should settle back in. It'll go back down to that 1.8. There we go, 1.8. What I could do is turn off this one and turn this one up to full. And let's just check the load on that. That's 1.4, 1.5. Yeah, so I'm going to struggle to get to exactly 2 kilowatt or 2000 watts, so that's not going to work. So I'm going to turn this one back down to single, turn this one up to 1, and that'll give us 1.8 kilowatt. And I still think that's a fair load on this inverter. Okay, so the surge of 4,000 watt, I would say, is very, very short term. Did that noise upset you, Cliff? Hey? I'm sorry, mate. That alarm, he was sleeping under the table there, and the alarm going off on the inverter, he didn't like it. I'm going to let that run for a bit longer now. I'll probably pull that battery down to, say, 80% capacity, and we'll see where we're at then. So down to 79% on the battery capacity, still running that 1.8 kilowatt load continuous, and it's doing it fine. Look, it's really not heating up. The fans, as you can hear, there's a bit of noise coming out of them, but again, it's not as loud as the 2 fan heaters over there, and you wouldn't expect it to be. What I might do, and I've had a particular customer ask me, will this run his coffee machine? Now, that's a great question, and do I know the answer? I don't. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and get a coffee machine, plug it into this 2000 watt inverter, and see if we can make our cup of coffee simulate being away camping or on the road. Coffee machine's all hooked up, and I brought the battery monitor over here so we can see how much load that this uses. So I'll load up our milk. Bear with me. Oh, like a little bit more than that. There we go. Now this is just how I normally do it. Okay, so it's heating up the milk now. That's using 475 watts. No big deal. Alright. This is a Breville. Okay, just a standard coffee machine. Pod coffee. Put it in. Double click. It'll get going in a second. Oh, there we go, 1.8 kilowatt load. So, heating the milk, preheating the water, and it'll come through and start in a second once it's ready to go. There we go. The load's coming off and on. The maximum I've seen is 1.8. 152 amps. Now you're not going to do that on a 100 amp hour battery, guys, on a 100 amp BMS, so that's not going to work. You can't use the 2000 watt inverter with that battery running a typical coffee machine or pod coffee machine. So, pod's done its thing. Milk's still heating. And remember, 1.8, we're getting close to the limit on this. So you could still have your, your laptop plugged in and probably your iPhones and probably a tiny bit of lighting, etc. But that's going to be the limit of this 2000 watt inverter. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. It says 2000 watt on it, so you know what you're buying. I'm sure it's quite capable of doing the 2000 watt. So the good thing is, I get to have a coffee now. What I might do is fiddle around with the loads now and try and get up to that exactly 2 kilowatt and see whether I can do that. I'm not sure whether I can. So, coffee's all made. What I've done, bingo, 2 kilowatt load, 165 amp continuous on the Renogy 2000 watt inverter. So I've connected up enough loads just to make that work. So I'm really happy with that. So we'll let that run now while I drink my coffee, and we'll see how this handles it. Still holding 2 kilowatt, no problem. And you'll see here it's 2.0, but I thought I'd go into the Bluetooth BMS app for this battery, and you can see the load on it is 2,151 watts, and the battery voltage is at 12.8. So you're comparing the discharge current there, you can see it on the right hand corner is 168.8 as opposed to 166 amps and 12.2 volts compared to at the BMS is showing 12.8 volts. And again, the shunt, so pretty much the same. So the internal shunt, for want of a better word, inside the BMS is at 71% and we're at 70% on the Renogy shunt. Okay, this inverter is holding 2000 watt continuous output, no problem at all. Surge, when I put that 2400, 2500 watts on it, it couldn't handle it, which is what you would expect. If you need more power, buy the 3000 watt inverter, quite simple. So just remember guys, if you're going to run the full capacity of this inverter, you're going to need something that can do 165 amps continuous. In my mind, you need a 200 amp BMS with a minimum of a 200 amp battery. Now that's a 300 amp battery. Sure, Renogy do 300 amp batteries as well. I'm not sure the BMS in their 300. I think it's around the 200 as well. I'll double check that and get back to you. But I think that's it. It's performing perfectly. It's doing what it's expected to do. When you overload it, it can't handle the load. You'd expect that. Everything else seems to be working fine. Look, it's really not generating any heat. To me, in my mind, sure, longevity is going to come into play, like all things, but bang for your buck, I think this inverter is only about, don't quote me, but it's only around the $400 to $450 mark. So if you're only going to use this inverter 3 or 4 times a year, I think it's perfectly fine. Why would you spend money on something more when this is going to do the job for you? Reasonably compact. It's a pass from me. I'm giving it a thumbs up. Yeah. Hope you like that one. Stay tuned for more. I'll probably review the MPPT solar charge controller next. Stay with me guys. Cheers.